right, I call the meeting to order at 1:03. Can we get a roll call, please?
Chaplain, here, Desire, here, Hart,
Here.
no, back off. Sorry. I like to forget you. Hart,
Here.
Selman, here, Zay,
All right, you have a quorum. Do you have any public comment?
no.
Just very brief chair remarks. Thank you everyone for coming. I know we've been on hiatus for a while. We went on a hiatus for my medical leave, and then once we came back, staff only has so many hours, so we wanted to get through the budget process and through the bulk of ARPA before we dove back into this. But that just because the committee wasn't meeting doesn't mean staff hasn't been working on this almost consistently really since late April, working with the state's attorney. So I just want to give a big thank you to Jason for all the hard work you've been doing over the last few months, as well as the state's attorney's office. I know there's been a lot of back and forth to make sure we're not just making changes, but we're making legal changes, which is always good. Next up, I'll make the motion to approve our minutes of April 20th, 2021. So moved.
Second.
Well, she moved.
Yes, a second.
The chairwoman.
Oh, you made the motion. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's okay.
Second.
It's a long day. Any comments, questions, or corrections? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Next up is on to our discussion. So I hope everyone saw last night we emailed out the freshest copy. This is with the state's attorney reviewing. So let's go through.
Do we have any physical copies of those?
Do we have any other?
I did not,
I can,
I can make it
I can go
happen.
run.
You know, just, I mean, I could work
No,
on
it's
it.
Or
fine.
you can work off mine, as long as she's taking notes on it, it's fine, you can work off it. And,
I have one, I have
no,
one.
no, next, she can just take mine.
Well,
I'll
does
have
anybody
Ann
else
take
want
one.
Does anybody else?
I don't have one, but.
Nick, would you mind?
Well, I
making
have
like
the
2
latest from April 20th.
Thanks,
Sorry.
Evan.
Is that what this is? From April
I'm
20th?
old.
There's been
You
changes
can't.
since
I
that was
prefer
sent.
to it.
Yeah, I
You sent
sent
it
last night.
Sorry.
So, I do
I know,
want,
but I have a hard time, even on my iPad, as I told you before, on my
Yeah.
iPhone, I couldn't see the red lines.
Correct.
And on my iPad, I can't see the red lines.
I don't know, it's something with iOS, that's the problem with the red lines.
So that's why I didn't print out the one you sent last night, but I do have the one, we haven't met since April 20th.
Yeah, there won't, well, April 20th, there'll be edits for legal matters, but the stuff from last night to the ones last week, there's very minor tweaks. And I believe if the chair wants, we're gonna go through most of those matters.
Okay. Nick, when he comes back, let's make sure you get a copy too, Dawn, so you have the changes.
Okay.
Okay.
So I will let you know also, the state's attorney last night did send, there was 2 clarifying points that we have, minor ones we'll go through from what even I sent you guys.
Okay.
They had 2 more they caught, and they were like, oh, hold on, we have 2, and they're small, they won't be of substance. But I'll-
You want it when we get to there?
Yep, when we
Okay.
get there, I will walk through and show you.
Do we have a copy to throw up on
I
the
do.
screen? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle, could you give me access? I apologize.
And if we could go to page 2 once you're all up.
I can do that. Thank you. Well,
Okay. So before that, the only changes are grammatical. The changing chairman to chair, we decided to do the gender neutral term. And then you'll remember we had a discussion for evening meetings, changing that time up to 5 p.m. just to give ourselves the leniency of more time to host an evening meeting. As we get to page 2 here, this item A, I believe the 72 hours is from the old, that was how it was in the rules currently, correct?
correct. So 72 hours is what it is. On advice of council, they indicated the Open Meetings Act only requires 48. And to make it consistent with OMA, it would make sense. However, there is nothing prohibiting a 72-hour time period if that's what the will of the committee is.
Do we have any objection to just updating that to match OMA at 48 hours?
No.
No.
Great, okay, so let's make that change then. And then down at the bottom of page 2, there's just sort of a grammatical note. Our state's attorney's office wants us to either use his, her, or they consistently. I think we did his, her in the majority of the document, so let's switch to that.
I was gonna say, whatever you guys prefer is what I will.
I assume there's no objections there, but just in case.
So, yeah, he, she, his, her,
Yep.
yada, yada, yada. Yeah.
All right. And then to page 3, We've added this section 5 here. Any comments, questions, or discussion of that item?
Page 3, item 5.
Yep, D5.
All right, yeah, I don't have a D5.
Okay, yeah, so on the screen here is the copy and then
All right, let me zoom in here. I apologize. We can make this much bigger.
I believe the purpose of this is so that we can, as we've talked about at our county board meetings, when we have something we want to vote on, we'd like to have something written. This is just providing the mechanism for motion to reconsider.
Correct, and I believe this stems from, on the board floor, we had a matter that you all kind of were like, well, hold on, what are we voting on? And this was the language to clarify that, make it so board members were aware of what it was.
This is the motion to reconsider, right? This is what I'm reading. Is that what I'm talking about? Okay.
Yep. 5 there. All right, any objections?
No.
Awesome. All right, so we'll update and keep that language. Chair. Go to page 9, please.
Also, formatting stuff, don't worry about, I will,
Yeah, do a fresh look.
before we do our final copy, you're gonna get a nice formatted, everything clearly as is.
Hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4.
You still have 4, you're good.
So this item number 5 there, oops, go back. All right, stay there. This, I believe we have listed twice during our conversations this spring. We just wanted it to match up both places where it mentioned lobbying. We wanted the language to match and be specific. So this says, you can't go and say I'm lobbying on behalf of the board without the board's consent, but you can go and say, I'm Ashley and I'm passionate about this issue as just a human who lives in this state, and that's always okay.
During a private citizen, you could do it.
Yes,
right. Exactly. You can go to Springfield and talk about gardening because that's something you're passionate for. But if you go and say, I'm Paula Deacon Garcia from District 2 and I want this, so says the board, that's it.
Okay.
It's just making sure that's really clear. Yes. All right, all good on this language? Great. If we go to page 10 under structure here, if we go to C, the technology committee, we've had a lot of discussions on how to get so that the elected officials throughout the county who are using the technology department have representation, also without making this like a 25-person committee. So this was something that I know a lot of thought went into this summer. So the way we've worked this out is that we would have the auditor, the coroner, the clerk, the state's attorney, the treasurer, and the regional superintendent of education, which do we need to maybe say the whole chief or whole special title there? And then 1 from each district. So that way we'll have 6 countywide electeds and 6 board members. Yes, please.
So now, okay, the state's attorney, because we used to have, I think the sheriff used to be on there.
Right, and we took them off because they don't actually use our technology department.
Okay, good. I just want
But
to make
they-
sure, because I don't want to like be,
Yeah.
So
the sheriff.
the 6 electeds or countywide electeds that use our IT department are the 6 listed.
Thank you.
I
Okay,
took
nice.
off
Okay.
the additional ones who don't use. our
Appreciate
IT
that. Thank you so
department.
much. I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
And then, of course, we communicated with the recorder of deeds office and the sheriff,
Okay.
anyone can join as
Thank
always.
you.
But yes, good point.
And the entire circuit court we took off as they're run through the states
Okay.
anyway.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And then they might appreciate that too, probably a little better use of their time.
Mhm.
Did you have a question?
I was just gonna say, if for some reason the sheriff in future years were to get on the IT.
Yep, and we could look at it again, I think.
Okay.
And of course, they can always, I know, it used to be Sheriff Village, I can't remember now who is the deputy who they assign, but they usually always have someone there. So it's actually been helpful, especially with the website redesign, to have sort of a thing to compare it to. It's kind of nice. So we were just reviewing this, the technology committee here, remember how we were trying to make it to add the clerk, and then that gave us way too many members. So now we have 6 countywide electeds who all are serviced by our technology department, and that'll be matched by 6 county board members.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm feeling really nauseous.
It's all right. It's a long day for us all.
And I'm pretty sure I'm not pregnant.
Yeah.
But you see.
I feel like
The attachment, that's what we red line too.
I'm sorry,
I
Grant.
think
can
you
you
have to
repeat that?
download it. It won't show up. The red lines don't show up. in the
Where
preview.
Yeah,
Like
like,
that.
yeah.
And
It's
then
pushed
push down
down.
there.
I'm
And
pretty
it'll
sure.
open it to you'll see reds. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. And then item D, just under technology, we had some clarification on the DuPage mayors and managers. Rather than assigning one from each district, it'll just be 6 mayors and managers. And we didn't talk about this directly, but I presume that's because it's a little difficult to find mayors who want to participate, although those who do are enthusiastic. So they wanted to give themselves a little bit of flexibility to make
I
sure
think
we
it
had.
was more of a flexibility
Yeah.
thing. I don't know if it was
It's just
individuals
'cause
not
they're
wanting to
scheduled.
participate.
Yeah, they're just
I think
busy.
it was, might have been just flexibility. Yeah, that was my understanding. I think that's their current guideline or their bylaws from what I remember.
Okay, so it's getting it to
Yeah,
match.
but it's also been a few months since I remember looking at this particular portion.
So is everyone okay with that change? Great. Let's go to the bottom of 11, please. So one thing we have noted is we didn't have a really official procedure for resignation. So we've simply added that a member who no longer wishes to serve on a committee needs to submit that to the chair in writing, and it's effective the date of the letter. And then the same thing, if you no longer wish to serve as chair or vice chair of a committee, that would be done in writing and as of the date of the letter. This just gives us a proper. Sorry?
Can't just say I quit.
No, not allowed. You gotta write it down.
So that's the county board chair, not the committee chair?
No, these are committee chairs, I believe.
Oh.
Yeah, it's any member of.
The resignation to the county board chair.
Oh, no, it's to the chair of, yeah, so you would, if you were resigning, your position on a committee, you would write the chair of the board.
The chair of the board.
Yeah.
Not the chair of the committee. Gotcha. I just want to make that. clarification.
All right, any objections there? Are we okay with that system? Great, thank you.
So,
Go ahead. Yeah.
I just see here, meeting time, it says 72-hour notice is given to each committee member.
Oh, that's another one we'll change.
Should we change it to
48 in
48?
A and B. Very good. Thank you, thank you.
We're on page,
Well, my pages don't match up with your page.
Weird.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, that was a really good catch.
Another one you said, Nick? And in B, there's 72 as well.
Mhm. So let's skip to the standing committees section. That's on page 16.
sorry, which page now?
16, okay, standing committees. So development, that one just had a little bit of, grammar matching and terms matching. For finance, we wanted to make it explicit that that was a committee of a whole, so we added that there.
For development,
Yes.
it says environmental issues, but didn't we agree on April 6th, I have a note here from April 6th, that we decided to keep environmental committee as a standalone committee? It's been many months since we looked at this stuff, so I could have it wrong.
I
They
think,
still do.
yeah, I think the development committee itself, when they're looking at certain developments, there's an environmental component to it. I could be incorrect. I might defer to Nick on that one.
I'm trying to look, where does it say environmental under development committee?
It's under A1, parent committee designation. It's in the last sentence.
You might have an older copy now. Yeah.
And up there, where does it say environmental? What is?
Yeah, that might be from the.
I think that's
April-
it.
That might be
We
the
caught that
April
last
one.
time.
I think that's all done. So, but, yeah,
Yeah.
Well, we haven't even met for months, so I don't know. This is the last one we had.
Right, this is the one that was not numbered because we had state's attorneys.
All right, well, let me use the new copy then, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Yep, so we're on page 16. So is that okay then?
Mhm.
Okay. Same with finance there, we made it a committee of the whole. And that's same too in section 3, that's where we did some updates to make the terms match what we call the departments and take out the airport authority. C is making the name of the Health and Human Services Committee reflect what it does. So that is the Human Services Committee is the name we decided on. And then some grammatical updates to make sure the care centers were called what it's supposed to be, and to take out the references to the health department, which we all know that committee does not have jurisdiction over and was very confusing to our residents.
Yep.
Everyone happy with those changes? Awesome. Transportation Committee, this is the one where we did include, we are eliminating the Public Transit Committee and getting those responsibilities put into transportation. And then I think, member Chaplin, I think you would specifically ask for the railroad things, or I might be making that up. I thought you would
I think
notice
you're
that,
making
but
that
it's
up,
in there.
but it's in
Okay.
there. Those were always in there, right? So,
Okay.
yeah, they were always in there. I mean, yeah, so, yeah.
All right, any questions, comments, or concerns about the Transportation Committee and these changes? Great. For JPS, just a grammatical to make it judicial and public safety, and then some changes. We don't have the youth home, that's in King County partnership now. The ways we do drug court has changed, so some updates there. Everyone all right with those JPS changes?
Yes.
Public Works, you remember we had to take out the drainage issues to give those properly to stormwater. The rest of it is just mostly grammar. And then the Stormwater Committee, the updates are reflecting the drainage items moving to their proper committee. And H is environmental. I think we had discussed maybe wrapping it in, and then after some feedback from the chair of that committee, decided to keep it separate. And then public transit, you see we've eliminated that one. Technologies has a grammar update. Strategic planning, we had discussed incorporating, and I can't remember how we decided to pull that back out.
I believe there was a couple comments from a few individuals indicating that they thought that strategic planning this is a very important topic for us to look at.
And this keeps us sort of mirrored with our collar counties too.
From
We
what
would have
I-
been kind of the weird group out. to
From
pull
what I
that, right?
correct.
And my thought was that each department should do their own strategic planning.
And we do that.
Yeah, so how it works right now with strategic planning is each department funnels their strategic plans through that committee. We do that, but they also present it to individual committees. But currently, as the staffer for strategic planning, I keep all of it combined as one, and I do that annual report of, okay, here's what the goals are this year. Here's the implementation. So that's the committee I can present it to.
Has that been happening though, Jason? Because as long as the current chairperson of that committee has been on that committee, it hasn't been about strategic planning at all. It's been about inclusion and diversity.
So I believe in June, it might have been a month sooner than that, I did do that presentation to that committee in regards to, here was the FY20. Oh, yeah, FY20, sorry. I haven't been here a full year yet, and that would give me 1 year of strategic plan, so I'm trying to get my FYs right. But we did do an FY20 implementation report, and it was a full report of here's everything that we did. And then we did the FY21 going forward. So I believe that was June. It may have been May. So we did have that. And again, we'll be doing that again this coming year. I will be sending out something to the departments probably, well, our fiscal year ends obviously December 1 or November 30. And so I'll probably be sending something to them shortly after that. So I would imagine again, probably in the first quarter of having.
Well, I
that.
know, and the chairman developed a new committee called Inclusion and
Yeah,
Diversity and Inclusion.
the Ad-Hoc
So
committee on
maybe
diversity.
they'll pull this out of.
I believe that'd be the case, but I can't speak for, I don't want to speak for that chair, but my understanding is that chair as well as the chair of economic development have made that diversity and inclusion ad hoc, diversity and inclusion, and they're going to be looking at some of those components of how procurement goes and other aspects of what the county is doing.
Good,
So,
because I just feel like the strategic planning committee has not been doing strategic planning.
We have any other questions or comments about this section? All right, thanks so much. Next is economic development. That just had some grammar. And then any comments on economic development? I'm sure we're good there. Okay. Next up is redistricting. So I had some questions about how we determine the chair. Currently, it's the most senior member of the board. I had some constituents who asked why it wasn't the vice chair, seeing as we have a split majority this time, and I think it's probably the only time that's happened. So I wanted to open it up to the committee to see if we're fine with it having the most senior member, or we'd like it to be something like the vice chair or finance, or I think vice chair makes sense because it's elected out of the body, but certainly up for conversation.
Well, just being on the if I may,
Yeah.
just being on the redistricting committee, I do see some institutional knowledge is helpful on the redistricting committee. So maybe we may get the senior most member of the majority party or of the, something like that. But I do think the institutional knowledge is very helpful. I just witnessed it, just going through the process right now. So I'm fine with either. But this committee does not have a vice chair either, does it?
That is my understanding. I don't believe it does.
Redistricting committee, no, there is no vice chair.
So
Why
do you
is
wanna-
it?
why is that? Why is?
It is because that's how the rules are written.
Okay, so maybe we add, maybe it's the,
Two senior most members
the vice chair and the senior most member is chair and vice chair.
of both parties.
No, like the vice chair and then the senior most member of the group. It doesn't have to be a
Okay.
majority party, but right, so maybe we do it that way.
So like if we had done it this way, it would have still had members A chairing and then you would have you vice chairing, or you would?
No, I would have the vice chair as the chair and then yes, the vice chair of the board has the chair and then the senior most member
For the majority.
of the board
Of the board.
as the,
I think
Vice
it's-
chair.
Yeah, I think it's important to have a senior,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
to
yeah,
your
so,
point,
and
Liz.
that we have that.
Well, I
one.
would suggest that to keep the process looking as nonpartisan as possible, have the senior most member of the majority party as the chairperson and the senior most member of the minority party as the vice chairperson.
We could do that. That's a
Not a bad
good,
idea.
I like that idea. That's a good idea, yeah.
So I just want to clarify, you're going to propose to make it an 8-person committee as opposed to a 7? Is that what you're looking?
Well, I guess,
It
well,
would probably have to be.
So-
would it have to be an 8?
The only issue would be, I mean, you ran into it a little bit, obviously, with Jim being chairman.
Right.
You're gonna have double representation of 2 districts, possibly, and potentially 3 people in 1 district on there.
Well, since the chair votes, right, the chair votes. on it.
Chair votes.
Well, couldn't we just have the chair be from whatever district they're from? Now, hopefully the vice chair is not from the same, the vice would be hopefully not from the same district, but it could be, but you have then the vice chair from another district, and then you have 4 from,
So,
I mean, the only thing to think about is, let's say Sheila was the senior most member, then you have 2 people in that district. And then do they elect a 3rd out of that district?
right?
It's just
that's
something
right.
to think about.
Okay.
so I think it's possible, however, we'd probably have to rework the wording of this entire section to clarify it that
Or
way.
maybe we just, I don't know, maybe we just leave it as is.
Jason, what do other counties do?
You know, what other kind
I haven't seen any other rules about redistricting
I think that might be
specifically.
something to come back to get some
Yeah.
best practices.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah,
Maybe see like what the colors, because
Yeah, that's
I think let's keep it just
Yeah.
Illinois because we are special flowers with our
Yes.
election rules.
Yep.
But yeah, I
No,
think
that's
that's a really good
perfectly
idea.
fine. Yeah, no, I,
See if they're voting or
from
non-voting.
remembering other people's, I don't actually remember them mentioning it, so I'd have to look at that.
All right, so that'll be our next step is we're gonna look to see how colors do this. Besides that question, are there any other questions about redistricting? And then we've had time to sit through that committee before we're making these changes. Next up, same with animal, like HHS, we're just updating the name to reflect what it actually is. So Animal Services Committee. Intergovernmental, we are updating it again to match how we've been doing it in practice, where the municipal member and the board member are co-chairs. Any other questions or comments on intergovernmental? Legislative, we want to shorten that, that very long title for us. And then this, the lobby, I think this mirrors the same exact language we had earlier. We just want to make sure anytime it's mentioned, the language matches up and that it's clear that as your own individual person on your own personal time, of course, you can advocate for whatever, but as a board member, you gotta have it as the board. All right, so that's all our standing committees. Let's go into our ad hocs. We've got a bunch of grammar updates here. Public comments. So we're on 31, section D here.
Go back to legislative. I still have an issue, challenge with committee members are not to represent the county while lobbying any bill or executive order for the state or the federal government without the consent of the majority county board or the county board chair. You know, I think it's been really fruitful. Obviously it has, because we passed the puppy mill ban in the state of Illinois. When Brian Krajewski and I went out many times and met with Linda Holmes or Stephanie Kippenway or some people on that committee, we didn't officially get the majority of the board to vote. Can Dawn and Brian go out and talk to, you know, Senator Holmes and Representative Kippenway? We didn't get the vote.
We have in the legislative agenda.
So,
right?
yeah, and I
But I don't
believe,
know if it was on it last year when we did go out there.
I was gonna say, I believe Cheryl spoke to this at one of our meetings, but it was, if it's in support of something that's on the agenda that's already been passed by the board, and to the best of my knowledge, the puppy mill bill was on there or some variation of it, that is the authorization. That is what allows it. So in that case, I believe you met perfectly the qualifications and requirements of it. So if it's on that legislative that was adopted by the board as a
And we're allowed
whole,
to talk to them.
then you're more than welcome to do that because you're furthering the efforts. of the
We're not
county.
talking about something that's not on our legislative. Gotcha.
Correct. I think that's where that solves that. That's your passage.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Good question. So if we go to public comments. So our conversation on this, I think, has really evolved from early COVID through now if we left the emergency orders, trying to figure out how we capture and maintain the freedom it gives our residents to be able to submit electronically, but also not increase the burden on our county board staff because there are only so many humans in that office. And to try to get it so that we can actually read those comments before we vote on them. So what we're proposing is that for electronic submission, they have to be submitted at least 24 hours prior to the start of the meeting. And so they need to be there by 7 a.m. the day before. That's what we're saying, right?
Yes, so this also, I did not make any changes to this since, nor did the state's attorney's office, because we felt that there was not enough directive from this. So this was the initial pass we took on it. So I think that's key here is to mention, yeah, this language does do that to where it be the beforehand so we can get it to you guys. However, I think the larger question is, are we still allowing online submittals? How are we doing? I think that we have to fix that first before we can move into the secondary. So I think that's the direction I need from you guys first is, am I looking at language to where we still have both options? Am I looking at it where it's just in part? I don't know. So that's where I'm looking for direction so I can make this a little bit more firmed up.
So the number heard the number.
Yeah, I feel strongly about maintaining an electronic submission. I think limiting it to the 30 minutes that we've been doing or however variation we want to discuss as this committee is fine, but I think it's been fruitful to have the public participate that way, and, especially in COVID, but moving forward, I think that's beneficial, so.
I agree with Member Hart.
My concern with the submitted comment is there's no verification that these are even people or that they're using their real names. So, and we are entering silly season, and that is my one concern. So, you know, I kind of like the idea of submitting public comment via, you know, electronically, but maybe we put those in the packet or we send them to the board members and I don't know if we necessarily read them out loud. I don't know. We don't have, it seems like, I guess if we have time, we could, but I really think, you know, we've seen a lot of, I don't want to say goofy, but you know, strange comments from people that we can't even verify if they're really a person. And then people could make up a Gmail account, right? And send 5 emails in, right? About something. So that's my concern with the public comment. I don't want to, limit anybody's ability to send in a comment, but and we can't unfortunately ask for evidence that they're a real person. We can't ask for an address or anything like that. So that's where we're kind of stuck. If it's a majority of this committee's, everybody wants to keep accepting public comment, but how do we split it to make it fair then? Do we say that we give 15 minutes to in-person and 15 minutes to online? I mean, I don't know.
So my suggestion would be that if you made the time to get here in person, we'll take up to 30 minutes of those. And so let's say there's enough to get us 20 minutes, then we
Right.
read 10
Kind of
minutes of
like we've been
electronic,
doing.
electronic comment, and then we stop, so that we never go more than 30. Because I think that's really been, that was the real kicker, was when we opened it up to the public comment,
Right.
2, 3, 4 hours on some special
But
days.
then send all the comments to the board members so we get to
Yeah.
see everybody's comments.
Yeah.
Or did you have something to add?
A couple things you could consider. Obviously, first of all, this says 60 minutes, so we've got to figure out is it 30 minutes or 60. Right now, the practice is 30 minutes in totality. Whatever's left over is for reading. Joan brought up a great point that right now they can submit till 7 a.m. If we keep that practice, there's a good chance that if we have something that generates a lot of public comment, both in person and online, you as the board won't see those public comment before you vote on the item.
Right.
So our suggestion would be maybe you cut off public comment coming in line at 4 o'clock the day before,
Or even three,
or
give
even
Dana a
3,
chance
and then the staff
get it all
can
together and
send it out to you guys the night before, so you can at least consider those for your votes. Because if we put it in the packet, that's great,
Right.
but you vote on it before you even have a chance to read it.
That's a good
That's a
idea.
great
Yeah,
idea.
good idea.
Well, particularly as we all know, in items of development
Right.
or some of the other items where people have a strong opinion for a strong reason in their neighborhood, as board members, you have the right to understand that issue as well as you possibly can, and some of this may feed into that decision making. So we want to give you every opportunity to become familiar with the issues in front of you, whatever they be.
So if we can cut it off like Monday at 3 p.m., whatever we have,
And then I got to give all
Group
the
it,
staff a chance
email.
to collate it and get it out to you.
and then we can still read those then Tuesday for whatever time is left of the 30 minutes.
Why can't we require somebody to list their address or give us a phone number? Like a newspaper?
Yeah, it's against the open meeting law.
Because on the sign-in form, it doesn't ask your address, right?
You don't have to give it.
I believe it's an option, but you don't have to put it down.
So somebody could be who they are.
Could we leave,
There's
could
a
we
case
have it
that
as an
says-
option on the electronic form? Just they don't have to fill it in.
I know that on that particular
Just say,
issue,
whatever we do in person and in electronically has to be the same thing. And then whatever the form has to be, the state's attorney determines.
Okay, and then did you have a comment?
But there's a case that says that we can't ask for that because half the time that people walk up and we ask them, where do you live?
You can ask, you cannot require them to provide the information.
Then I guess I would like the form to at least have a blank address, phone number blank, because 90% of the people will probably fill it out.
I believe the current one
I can
does
look
have
up
that,
the
you get that, you
electronic
can
stuff.
have that information's already, it's allowable to put
Okay.
on there. The current form.
Maybe for our, yes, I'll get you next, but for our next meeting, we have an example of the submission form for electronic and in person? Because I'm realizing I've probably only seen one filled out, so we can sort of just have our eyes on that.
Well, I was just saying, I thought that they put that in place to prevent somebody from, if you state your address and somebody doesn't like what you said, they
Yeah,
have your
come
home
find you.
address and then there you go. So that's an issue that we have with that, I
Well,
think.
I'd like to know that the person's really a DuPage County resident.
But they don't have to be.
No.
But
So,
if they're-
Anyone can talk about anything at any of our meetings. That is correct.
so if I can kind of summarize where I think the consensus is, we would like 30 minutes total of public comment. The electronic comment we will take till 3 p.m. on Monday, so that staff can get us a packet and not have to be here till 9 p.m. And then on meeting days in those 30 minutes, we'll start with in-person comment. And if we have time left over, we'll read as many electronic comment, but all of us members will have the packet of comments for, whatever meetings we have on Tuesday, so we can have that feedback before we vote.
Yeah,
Great.
I'll work to get that
We'll make
language
that
updated,
lawyer
not a problem at all,
Perfect.
not a problem at all. I believe one of the copies I have has that
Okay,
language
language
already
in
written
there
out, so
somewhere?
that's fine.
I think this is really important. I'm gonna agree with Uncle Hart there. I think it's a way to modernize our board. I had never attended a board meeting before I was elected because I worked a full-time job. And the ability to watch them on YouTube. I mean, just as a member, I love that they're on YouTube, especially for development. I go back and watch development meetings often because they get into the nitty-gritty. But allowing people to participate in your government, even if they can't afford to be there on a Tuesday morning, I think is really important, something we should be really proud of. All right, so moving on from that item, debate. Remember we had talked about this and we decided there's far too much rules and we all were adults. Yep, so we took out a lot of the very specific things. It's pretty much wait till you're called on and we have any questions or concerns on that section?
Let's just double check our electronic means section. It doesn't say electronic.
So, I would actually, Madam Chair, I think this would be a good point to real quick talk to the state's attorney's office and inquire as to why their suggested language is being added here.
So section 3, basically it's what we call a liability shield. The reasoning for it is that if a board member were to become involved in an accident of any sort involving a motorized vehicle while they were attending a meeting, that would make the board potentially liable for any injuries sustained by third parties. Also, if members of the board that voted to allow that person to attend remotely knew or had reason to know that they were operating a motor vehicle at the time they remoted in, those members of the board that allowed it could also be held personally liable.
We're all liable. Very good.
So this is a liability shield and we recommend it highly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think there's disagreement. So I just want to clarify, I'll just say me, let's say I was driving here, I'm driving in the car, you can tell. I say I would love to be let into the meeting. It would be up to the chair to say no, correct? I want to make sure, how do we enforce it? That's my question.
So anytime that you're seeking to be attending remotely, it would go by section 7 of the OMA, which states that it's up to a vote of the committee or board.
So in theory, could we vote to allow them, even though this says they shouldn't be?
Technically, yes, you could. However, this rule advises you not to.
Okay. Okay, I just want to make sure we communicate that to the chairs committees so that we know the right procedures. Like, do we all agree that we shouldn't be driving cars or boating
Yes.
or flying aircraft,
agree.
We've done it several times.
bicycling, whatever?
Yeah.
And also
It's
just as
against
a
the
little
law.
edit, the second to last word on page 32 is regards. Could you take out the S, please? It's regard, just regard to. It's like one of those nails on chalkboard thing, like towards and forwards.
I'm sorry, can you say where this is again?
Yes.
Oh,
very
never mind,
bottom.
never mind, I got it.
It's just
Yeah.
regard to, in regard to. Thank you.
Next, just to be clear, you can be a passenger, but you cannot be operating.
Exactly.
Driving a vehicle, right?
Or the car, or the boat, or the
Or
plane.
the airplane.
Or heavy
I
equipment.
guess just for clarification, if someone says, if you question it as the chair and they say, well, I'm a passenger, someone else is driving, but then it turns out they're not, they get in an accident.
We're all in trouble still.
No, not necessarily, because again, this rule, it's a legal statement and it's also a factual statement that per our awareness, A, you're not allowed to do this, you shouldn't be doing it, and B, you are held to not be acting in furtherance of the board interest at the time of your operating the vehicle.
Okay, so it would be in the board member then who lied saying they were.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you,
Exactly.
okay.
So, and they should read that because it does say that it's up, so it's the board member's responsibility. So if you're driving and you're gonna be late, just come in late, don't ask to
Yes.
zoom in, correct?
I
Right.
agree.
Pull over to the side of the road and stop driving.
That's
Thank
fine.
you. Thanks for answering the question. So I appreciate it.
Awesome, thank you. So continuing down on page 33, I don't know if there were people on
Well,
this.
let's go to number 2 here because I had a problem. Is Connor here? Connor is
No.
not here.
Nick is our.
Because this is an example that happened that maybe Ozag is on vacation. and she asked to zoom into the redistricting committee meeting. And she is on that committee, and she said, I know if I zoom in, I'm on vacation, it's not at work, I'm not ill,
Yeah.
it doesn't meet the requirements. So they told her that, I mean, I thought you could just zoom in and not be able to vote. She understood you weren't able to vote. And I talked to Connor about this earlier, and it's, so this goes against OMA, because Connor told her that she couldn't participate in any way. She couldn't even attend the meeting because she was on vacation. And this says you can attend. Anyway, I'll stop talking now. Do you have any answers?
I guess I'll defer to Nick Kattmeyer first, but then I can.
So everything on the OMA is based upon the state statutes. And it is clear that a member of the board cannot participate. If, let's say there's a live YouTube feed or whatever, they can look at that. But if the general public does not have access to whatever you're asking for, they cannot participate. So they could go on and watch it like the live feed of County Board or Finance, they could do that, but they can't go in through the Zoom link and do that. And so that's very clear, unless if you meet one of the requirements set forth in the memo from Lisa Smith, having to do with emergencies or work-related business. And so you can't even come on and look at the meeting.
Has this changed, or has our, I don't know, because I attended most of the redistricting committee meetings via Zoom.
It's more of a refinement, but I will pass it to.
So I can speak a little bit, but believe Nick's looking at it too. But my understanding is they asked the Public Access Council for a little bit more information on it. And we just received this non-binding opinion from the PAC, Public Access Council. And there is something that is within DuPage County. I can't remember which, you have it in front of you, but it was one of the groups there that the PAC did issue a non-binding opinion. So it's not one of the formal ones, indicating that by allowing somebody in this forum with the Zoom, as Nick was indicating, it does create an Open Meetings Act violation. So this was new information to us.
So I should not have been able to attend those redistricting meetings via Zoom.
This whole landscape, this whole landscape has just blown up in the last year with COVID and Zoom. Everybody's scrambling to figure out what's happening. My guess is if you wait 3 months, it's going to be different. So, it's one of those that the second we get the information, we will let you know. But as of right now, that's the latest and greatest that we, being the state's attorney and staff, know about.
Gotcha. So anyway, this paragraph here then goes against.
No, because I think number one, Don, if you read number one, the DuPage County Board adopts the requirements set forth in the Open Meetings Act.
Yes.
5 ILSL, as it may be amended from time to time with regards to members of the DuPage County Board participating in DuPage County Board and committee meetings by electronic means. So that first bullet point,
If a member wishes to.
then number two applies. They have to meet one of the criteria in that code ILS 12120/7, right?
It's like number one's the prerequisite, and if you
Yeah.
meet that.
Oh, I
then
see what
two
you're
is
saying.
prerequisite.
I see what you're saying.
So
Yeah.
So you're saying number two allows if you're sick or if you're ill or have to work or on county board business.
correct.
I
Yeah,
got
it's only if one applies, does two then become effective.
Gotcha.
I
Okay,
believe
gotcha.
that's how that one would work out.
Correct.
Staff or other elected officials can zoom in and participate. If
Staff doesn't count toward Open Meetings Act in the slightest, and other elected officials are not a voting member of that body, so yeah, that there wouldn't be any.
But like for the technology committee, they have to
Technology
come
committee,
in.
that brings up a great point, because a
Yeah,
lot
they
of
have
the
to.
electeds zoom in.
We don't let
That's
them
gonna have
anymore.
to change.
Yeah, we haven't let them since the end of July because we were worried we'd have to go back and redo meetings. So, which I know stinks, because they, they want to multitask. I don't blame them, but alas. All right. I have many thoughts about OMA.
Members shall not operate motor vehicles, watercraft, aircraft, or heavy equipment.
We want it to be inclusive.
It's very good.
Hovercraft.
Oh, horseback, yeah, bicycles.
It's important that that's in there. Thank you for explaining our liability as well as,
Yeah.
individually.
Yeah, because I think that was something I hadn't considered, that us all voting on something then gives,
Mhm.
so it's really crap. All right. Section 8, I'm going on to parliamentary rules. Can you explain what you need for B?
Yeah, for B, this was on advice of the State's Attorney's Council, advice, that I think it was, I don't think we clarified, it just said a majority of the county board. Robert's Rules of Order uses 2/3 majority, so. It
It
was
just keeps
just,
us consistent.
Yep, and it's specific, which I think is good.
Yep.
All right, any objections? Can't really object to Robert's rule. but
2/3 majority of those,
I object to Robert's rule.
2/3 of the majority of those attending, or 2/3.
well, how this reads is 2/3 majority of the county board, so it'd be whatever the, of everybody, be about of 18, which is.
We may do better to say those in attendance because.
Yeah, I think it should be in attendance.
For that meeting.
At least we have like a barely quorum.
Right, so if you only have 17 at a meeting, it would be 2/3 of the 17.
Exactly, of those in attendance work.
Can you round up?
Yes, you're right, you're right.
Who's the half vote?
All right. So is everyone okay with that? Obviously, it just matches Robert's rules.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
We can go to page 35 under B, motion to amend. And Susan, do you want, or do you guys want to explain the here?
Oh, for motion to amend?
Mhm.
Okay, let's see. A motion of the proposition shall not be approved of 3 months. This was the state's attorney's office getting, there was some technicality. Do you want to try going through those, or I'm trying to remember the first one?
So these were verbiage changes that Connor had suggested. This was given his familiarity with Robert's rules and the way that they must operate interchangeably with one another. I don't have the specifics currently. If you'd like, I can follow up with Connor to determine exactly.
Yeah,
why
just
these
maybe
are-
at our next meeting, just in case, just so we know the logic.
So,
behind it.
so some of the background I do remember off this though is we've talked about some of the amendments that may have been talked in front of the county board. It was, okay, well, hold on, let's do this an amendment, then we can wait a minute, send it to a committee to discuss, get a little bit more background. I think that's where this report comes in, the committee report on it. But we'll have to follow up with more again, Connor, but that was my understanding. It was, we do the amendment, we say, okay, hey, committee, look at this. They do the committee work on it, send a report back, then you guys get it again. I believe that was the case. and-
Yeah,
Actually,
that's perfect.
that does make sense as to number 4. I was first referring to the first edit here, the chapter 8, prohibited more than 3. As to the 4th one, that is correct. As to, it provides a procedure for amended by committee's recommendation.
I would suspect the first one was Connor felt that maybe the language was limiting and he wanted to be very explicit. It wasn't.
I actually remember this now. I
Okay.
think it was, we went into motion inception, if you may, on
Okay.
an item once. And this makes it so there can only be 3.
I see.
3, I mean, it was minimizing it as opposed where like 4 or 5 or something like that. I believe that was the case, but I'll double check that
Okay.
and we can both get back to you all on that one.
Okay, so if it's okay with the committee, we'll keep both those edits. We'll get the just clarification for our next meeting so we can make a final choice. In C there, that's where there's a there that needs to be his, hers.
It's heard.
And then there's just some unwritten motions. There's some clarification. Because we've had this come up on the board floor where someone moves to amend and now we're just reiterating that it should be in writing so we can all look at it.
So just a question on that. So let's say we move to amend after conversation took place on the board floor and we didn't know the night before we were gonna amend it. I mean, because sometimes that happens, right? We might all be
Right.
discussing something
And your mind has changed.
and
So-
or we might say, and everybody's in agreement,
Mhm.
but we can't make that amendment unless it's in writing, but we didn't know through discussion we were gonna amend it. How do
So
we?
this rule doesn't require every motion to amend automatically to be reduced to writing. It's
Okay.
only if a member requests that you do so. So say you move to amend orally during a committee meeting or a board meeting, and before you vote on it, a member, make sure they're clear on the motion, asks you to reduce it to writing prior to the vote.
Okay.
Then that would happen. So every
Okay.
motion to amend this is not required.
Okay, great. Okay, I just want to make sure.
So an example would be, you made a 3-sentence long motion amendment to it. Can you write it down real quick so we can reread it, and put it up on the board?
Oh,
Something like that. It
it doesn't have
versus-
to be turned in a
Yeah,
one
it's
night
not-
or anything. Okay, gotcha.
Clarity.
Correct,
Okay.
because also for record purposes, they want to make sure that the motion was specifically stated. in the
Thank you.
word.
I just want to make.
Yeah, so I mean, I think at that point it'd be, okay, here's a piece of paper and pen. Can you write what you just said?
Gotcha.
Let's reiterate it. You vote on it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right, is everyone good with that?
Yes.
Yes.
H, my only comment under there was for a motion to lay on the table, an example of this, should that be a set point? Because it's literally, it's like an example, it's not the rule itself.
Sure,
Yeah, that works. That might be nitty gritty.
Good idea.
Any other questions on the motion to lay on the table section? Right, seeing none. Motion to substitute, or motion to postpone and motion to substitute, use of like state's attorney, OMA kind of updates. Is there anything
Correct.
special we need to know?
I think this was out of clarification to a discussion topic that came up on the board floor, and I think this solidifies what the answer is.
The thing is that this difference between tabling and postponing.
Okay,
Tabling usually kills it, postponing usually sets it to a date certain for reconsideration.
all right. Any questions, comments on that, on J or I or J? Okay. And then reconsideration there, it has the same sort of clarification, so let's just include that. Okay. Let's go to N and O. And the motion received and placed on file, that looks like this, we didn't have proper language for it, now we have language for it. Very good.
Clarification point.
And then same with committee reports. Any comments, edits, questions on those two sections there? All right, and then P is some revised language, which essentially says, come here, go to Robert's Rules of Order, and that's in charge. All right. Yep. Language here at the bottom of page 41 under roll call voting. Again, just clarifying and giving advice, and that this doesn't restrict you from doing that. Any comments, questions, or concerns on that item? Okay. And then moving on to E.
Can I just
Oh, yeah, sure.
point of? I always thought that we got elected to vote yea or nay. We should abstain or say present, so. But
They're allowed in Robert's rules, aren't they?
well, I know, it's my pet peeve.
I
said that before.
We're all allowed to talk about it. I appreciate that.
Okay, so moving on to section E, the opinions of the state's attorney. We had a good amount of conversation about this. This is just saying the way to formally get an opinion that has some heft, and then of course we can always go for advice because the state's attorney is our attorney is board members. And this is just sort of clarifying that.
So what's the difference between a formal opinion and like if you sent in, like I asked those questions about the liability.
That's advice.
That's advice, okay.
Yeah,
So an
it's
opinion
informal.
would be,
An opinion is actually run up the flagpole all the way to the state's attorney himself.
okay,
So it's Bob Bruin actually weighing in and providing a formalized written opinion to the board on.
okay. A legal issue, because I have called just Bob Berlin to ask him, hey, hypothetically, if this was a situation, am I breaking the open meeting?
And that would be again an informal opinion.
Okay, so that's okay
That's
to do,
always
okay.
Yes, I've called Bob Berlin myself.
That would be
That's
informal
fine.
advice. That would be advice as opposed
Okay.
to an opinion. An
Okay.
opinion is something that's written and formal.
Okay,
And he would tell us if he's like, that one's gonna come from the chair, sort of both sides know how that works, right?
Certainly.
okay, great, thank you.
I think it was really good work of this body to sort of clarify
Yeah.
that informal part.
But it's still legal advice.
It's advice. It's not a
What's-
formal opinion.
Okay, like the difference between asking an attorney a question. I mean, I get what member Chapman is saying, if you're getting advice or an opinion,
So,
it still has to be good advice, right?
so I think there's one thing, so then I'm just gonna bring this in from like a state perspective. So like the attorney general also can do a formal opinion versus informal. So I'm just gonna compare it to the state for 1 second. So like when Kwame Rule gets asked a question, if he wants to point out, here's this legal topic that we're discussing, here is my official opinion on it, where I'm going on it. And it's like a substantial memorandum or something like that, that is done. And I believe that's what Bob Berlin's done in the past with a few things.
Exactly.
The informal is more of the assistants or the associate counsels giving legal advice, yes, to staff, to the board members, stuff like that. But it's not like discussing a specific legal issue or something that maybe the law isn't 100% determined on, whereas like there's a lot of case law and the informal that we can easily, you know, they can easily get.
Practice law, and you don't really.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think that's why it's called a practice. It changes all the time.
You guys are our legal, I mean, you are our legal representation
Yeah,
on this board, right? I mean,
That is correct.
So, right, so sometimes we would ask these questions just for our own personal, like, hey, I'm okay to do this, right?
Yeah, that would be just informal advice. Yeah.
So you're talking about a long written legal opinion. If you want something written from Bob or Lynn, you have to go through the chair to get it.
Exactly. These would be things that have sort of a political, or you're expecting to be cited by some court later on.
Okay.
You know.
Right, that's kind of the difference, right, is that that's something that could be cited by law and has some sort of heft to it, whereas him just telling us about which meetings we can and cannot go to, like that wouldn't be evidence or supporting.
Correct.
Good.
Help a little. I know it's
Yes,
messy,
it
I
does.
agree. All right, and the very last item, we're gonna look at here at the bottom of 43. That was been added in sort of legal language, sort of saying, you know, otherwise, if it's not under here, it applies to this other section. And then we will add in the effective date once we get it to the board for. All right, so next steps, I think, are the revised copy with these things we have consensus on and a few other questions. And so our hopes is our next meeting, which I think we're not going to schedule today. We're going to give you some time to see what you need to do and then come back to
I would
us.
prefer that if
Okay,
you all
great.
don't mind,
Yep.
at least 2 weeks if you don't mind.
Yep. So what I'm hoping is the next meeting will have a pretty, like a final copy to look at. And then that will be our final meeting of this before it goes just to county board, right? It doesn't have to go through. county?
So there, yeah, just kind of work. Well, actually, that's a good point because our current rules actually finances the rules thing, so it may actually have to go through. It may have to go through finance, but I do know it has to go to the county board twice.
That's right, it does have to go.
So I think it could be one of those potentially goes to finance the first day, then goes on to the board agenda, but then we have
And then the
to,
next
there's your first reading and then there's the second. So,
Oh, that way.
yeah, so there. What, John?
Wait for
Yeah, the
reading
first
or
reading.
must
So I think this is the only one we can't waive per the rules, if I remember correctly. So,
Yeah, I
That-
think we
that's my-
decided we were
yeah,
gonna do the
that's-
most readings just because it's
yeah,
a big
that-
change.
that's
We
my
wanna make sure we're
understanding.
being totally proper.
So I just want to double check my directive. So we'll make these edits and whatnot. And I'm still not going to put dates in there until.
Yep.
Now, on the next agenda though, do we still want only a draft or do we want to actually want in the packet so you could vote on it for to continue forward?
I think in the packet, vote
Yeah, I
on it.
think
I think
we're
we're
ready.
about there.
That's fine. Then I will add the dates accordingly.
So I'll be attending them, but I don't
Yeah.
usually get the
Yeah,
copy.
yeah.
I think
My
that's fine.
secondary then is, do you guys want me to actually print you all a copy? I know previously we didn't want me printing copies of it, but I can print you all a copy
You
of
know,
it.
I would like a copy just because my iPad doesn't pick up the red line.
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah, let's just do it because it's the final
Okay,
copy.
then that's fine. We'll print it. That's
Be
fine.
double-sided, we won't tell member Rutledge. We'll just say that all our personal copies will keep forever.
That's perfectly fine. I just wanted to
Oh,
double
that's
check that I
true,
correct.
that's true. We can keep all
Any
that.
papers
Yeah,
can
that'll take a
always be
rip.
recycled.
Correct.
That's right, that's right.
So it will be a red line copy, obviously, and then when approved, I'll approve all the changes and stuff, and that'll be the official, but
Perfect.
you guys have that. So
So are we thinking just one more of these or probably two then?
that is up to the direction of whatever you guys
I
like.
would love to get to one more. meeting.
I think that I can have all the edits based on this. I got a lot of great feedback and I do know there was, again, it was two little things, but I think we already addressed it in here from the state's attorney that we'll put in, but I'll call it out to you guys, but I think there's wasn't substantive. I think it was just a couple word choices.
Okay, so we're gonna try to do one more meeting of this and then get it to finance and county board twice, hopefully by the end of the year. And then,
I believe that's possible. Yeah, I don't think that'll be a problem.
all right, any old business?
Yes. Okay, so 3 meetings, yes, so, yes, if we get it in 2 weeks, whatever that date might be at this point, November or something, yeah, we can get it
We're gonna
through.
move it forward pretty quickly in order to hit that.
Yep, okay, we can do that.
Awesome. Any old business? Any new business? All right, I just want to really thank everyone for, I think this has been such an awesome committee, not the members who are even on the committee, participating and bringing all their ideas.
And that's why I suggested that after we're done with this by the end of the year, that we start working on cleaning up the DuPage County Code of Ordinances.
We'd have to bring that to the chair because he'd have to do a new ad hoc, but yeah.
Because that hasn't been looked at for years.
Yeah. Do Would you like to email the chairman about that?
I will.
Yeah, sure, I think that's a great idea.
Can I ask a question real quick? With the, you talking about all the codified ordinances that we have?
Yeah.
Typically, I mean, we can do whatever the board would like, but typically those originate in the parent committees. Because Public Works Committee has their own sewer and water ordinances that are codified, stormwater does. So typically that action, it goes through the parent committee.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, why don't you take a look at it if you think it needs an ad hoc discuss with the chairman. All right, without objection, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
Jason for all his work.
Yes.